Continue with what we've been doing. Let me share my screen. So we'll continue looking at the identity and inverse. And we'll start by looking at the laws, the rules, as we normally do. So the rule says, right, if you have a number, we're going to call that number n, and we add it to the negative of itself, we get 0. That's the first rule. The second rule says if I have a number n and I subtract it by itself, then I get 0. And remember, we need 0 because we're looking at the concept of dealing with the inverse to produce the identity. So let's look at the third rule. The third rule says n, or any number n, times 1 over itself, or I reciprocate, that's another way of putting it, will equal 1, since 1 is the identity of multiplication. Then the last rule, it says that n divided by itself, or any number divided by itself, should give me 1. And again, that's the fourth rule. So let's look at some examples. So example 1, it says given 2 minus 7i, 2 minus 7i, added to the negative of itself. So the negative of itself means if 2 was positive here, that means inside the bracket it has to be negative. And the 7i being negative out here, inside the bracket has to be positive. That's what it means to the negative of itself. So that it equals 0. And how does this happen? Well, 2 plus a negative 2 will cancel out. And negative 7i plus a positive 7i will also give me the 0. So that's how I get the 0 there. So that's the application of the first rule. The second rule, it says 2 minus 7i minus, and it says you take the number, you minus itself. So inside of the bracket, I put the same number, 2 minus 7i will equal 0. And you can see it here, 2 minus 2 will give me 0. And negative 7i minus a negative 7i. So a negative times a negative will give me that positive. So I'll have a 7i and a negative 7i, which will cancel out and become 0. So that's the application of the second rule. The third rule says 2 minus 7i, so that's the number n, times the reciprocal of itself. So 1 over itself. And that itself here is 2 minus 7i equals 0. Because remember, this whole thing will cancel here and will cancel here. So how many times can 2 minus 7i go into itself is 1. 2 into 7i is, into itself is 1. So you're just going to get 1 times 1 divided by 1, which is still 1. And of course, it's application of the third law. In the fourth one, it says 2 minus 7i divided by itself, because it says any number divided by itself, I have to divide by itself, should give me 1. And that itself is 2 minus 7i. So we say, to conclude, we say, therefore, the inverses are negative 2 plus 7i, itself, which is 2 minus 7i, 1 over itself, 2 minus 7i, and then again, lastly, itself, 2 minus 7i. And we have completed the problem.